When developing applications with C# and Visual Studio, and you're creating things like variables, like integers, booleans, maybe instances of classes, objects, arrays, and things like that, it's kind of important to understand what is happening with those in the computer's memory. So what if I told you this? Depending on what data type you chose for your variables determines where and how this is stored in memory. What do I mean by that? Well, if you use an integer variable or a Boolean variable or a double, for example, then these are stored and accessed very differently from different data types. And when I say different data types, I mean things like strings, arrays, and custom objects. But why is that important? Well, there's a couple of reasons why you might want to learn about stack and heap memory. One, for performance, your application can run and function a lot faster when you understand these concepts. But not only that, but what if I told you that, for example, if you pass an object into a method, you could potentially lose data or overwrite existing data? What would you think about that? Now, these are two of the many reasons to learn about stack and heap memory, and this is the purpose of this tutorial right now. Now, from experience, and believe me, your average developer won't have much knowledge on what's happening in memory with these variables. However, just having a tiny bit of knowledge on this will let you stand out from the rest of them. So let's talk about stack memory for a moment. The architecture of stack memory is kind of like a stack of pizzas or something like that. You keep adding pizzas to the stack, one on top of another, and then remove them sequentially. So the top one first, followed by the next one. You can't access, for example, pizzas in random orders. It has to be added to the stack, so added to the stack of pizzas, or removed from the top. So this is how stack memory works. It's sequential. So you add things to the top and you remove from the top. We keep short-lived items on the stack. Now, what is a short-lived item? Well, these are generally called value types. Things like integers, booleans, characters, floats, doubles, things that are kind of quick, simple, things which are considered not complex. So simple data types like those. So not things like complex objects. And when we store things in stack memory, it's retrieved fast. It's a very fast area of memory, just from the way it's architectured sequentially. Now, the heap area of memory is quite different. Imagine that stack of pizzas, but instead of a nice organized stack, throw them all on the floor, so there's pizzas everywhere. So in heap memory, there's no ordering of the items in the memory per se. However, because of the natural layout of items in the heap memory, retrieval is slower because the process is more complicated on accessing the data. Therefore, it's considered slower than stack memory. Generally, you keep long-lived items on the heap, so complex objects, but also things that will be made available for a long time, so for a long duration of the running of your application. Whereas things on the stack would be considered short-lived, so maybe a quick calculation like 4 plus 4, for example. So what kinds of data types and items are stored in the heap area of memory? So it's things like objects, classes, when we instantiate a class, strings can be huge items, arrays, anything which is global, so globally available throughout your whole application. So for example, even though a simple integer is considered a value type, however, if you made this global, like static or something like that, and it's made available to every class in the system, then this is where the rules change. This would be stored in the heap area of memory because it needs to be made available for longer, so long-lived items in the heap. So things like strings, classes, arrays are all considered reference types, and that's a keyword you may hear a lot in the future. When you create a new reference type, which is stored in the heap area of memory, what also happens is that something called a pointer is created on the stack. So what happens is the pointer on the stack points to an area of the heap memory where your object data lives. So when you create a reference type, like an array for example, a pointer is added to the stack and the actual meat of the operation is added to the heap. So the piece of information on the stack pretty much says, okay, you can find it right here at this memory location on the heap. That is the only thing that gets added to the stack when you create a reference type, like something complicated, like an array, for example. So this is where the name reference type comes from, because we're referring from the stack to the heap where the data kind of lives. And this is why things like integers, booleans, chars, simple types are called value types, because the value is directly stored in the stack area of memory. Now, I appreciate that this is quite a lot to understand and take in, but don't worry about understanding every single thing I've outlined in this tutorial. The main takeaway is to know and understand that certain data types are stored in the stack area of memory, and the stack area of memory has its own characteristics and benefits, and other data types are stored on the heap, again with its own characteristics and things like that. In the next couple of tutorials, I'll be using some examples so you can further understand this. So don't worry about understanding everything right now. But right now, I'm going to talk about something called a stack overflow. Now, you may have heard of the website Stack Overflow, or maybe you've heard of the term before. It doesn't really matter if you've heard of it or not. But what we're going to do is intentionally cause a stack overflow in C#. And I think it will be quite a fun example to simulate, because I can show you that stack memory has size limitation, and this is why large complicated objects are stored on the heap. So let's try and overflow the stack area of memory now with a quick example. So I'm over here in Visual Studio now. I have a very simple application. From the main method here, we're calling an overflow method. And the overflow method is just writing hello to the console window. So not much is going on here. Now, an easy way to cause a stack overflow is to have a method call itself. So you may be asking yourself the following question: how does this cause a stack overflow? I'm not defining any integers, booleans, anything like that. What is actually overflowing the stack? Well, when you call a method, the method reference is also added to the stack. This is another example of stack memory. So we can achieve a stack overflow like this as well. Similarly, we can create, a few million variables that are integers. Perhaps that would work too. So there's lots of ways to accomplish this, but this is a quick example of a very easy way to do this. So I'm going to run the application now, and we're going to see what happens. So I run the application. It pretty much crashes out. It says in Visual Studio, Stack Overflow exception. And when I look at the console window here, you can see it says Stack Overflow repeated 24,109 times before the stack is completely full and it started overflowing. So if we look at this diagram here, you can see how the stack and heap memory grow. But the stack memory is limited. The point of the stack memory is to store actual values for data types like integers. It'll actually store, for example, 15 on the stack, rather than if we have a big reference type like an array, then this is stored on the heap, because these can grow very, very large. However, with the stack area of memory, it's limited, it's finite. You can only put so much information here. And as you can see here, we can store a reference to our method call 24,109 times. So that is how limited it is. And this is why everything isn't stored on the stack. Yes, the stack is fast, but its space is limited. The heap is slower, but it's a lot larger. So you see there's pros and cons of each, and this is why both of these exist, and also why it's important to understand both. So I want to talk about one more thing, and that's the call stack. What is the call stack? If I come back into Visual Studio here and scroll down, you can see there's a little window here called call stack. If you don't see this window, then come up to the top, go to debug, then Windows, and then call stack, and this should appear at the bottom right here. What the call stack does, it gives you a visual representation of your method calls, for example. So you can see here, we started with the main method here. We called overflow, and we repeated this 24,106 times before finally ending in a Stack Overflow. So it gives you a nice visual representation of your method calls. And you can see the architecture here is pretty much like the pizza example I was talking about earlier, with the first call being the bottom pizza, and these are slowly added onto the stack. But the reason I'm talking about the call stack right now is that beginner developers kind of get a little bit confused between stack memory and the call stack. Now, the call stack gives you a nice visual representation of your method calls, but it's not stack memory. This isn't what you see in stack memory. The call stack doesn't show you your variables and assignments and things like that. It only gives you kind of like the method calls. So while they are kind of loosely related, the call stack is not stack memory. And I can illustrate that now with a better example of the call stack. So take a look at this example here. It's quite simple. The main method here calls method 1 calls method 2 calls 3 calls 4, and finally in 4 we just say hello to the console window. So it's very simple. But this example will show you how the call stack works and kind of how these method references get added into stack memory. So basically the stack architecture, the pizza architecture. So let's have a look at an example right now. I've added a breakpoint here on the very first line. So we're going to enter break mode as soon as this is hit. So I'm going to compile and run the application now. So now we're in break mode here. If I just bring this window up with the call stack, you can see one item has been added to the call stack, which is main. Now I'm going to step into this by pressing F11 on the keyboard. And now you can see I'm inside method 1. Now this has been added to the call stack here. So this is our first pizza in our stack, and this is our second pizza. Now I'm going to press F11 again. Now we have our third pizza on top. I'm going to step into this again. We have our fourth pizza. So you can see how this works. So the call stack gives you a nice visual representation of where you are in your application during a debugging session. It's semi-interactive as well. You can double click these and you can see where you are, where this method was called from, which is really helpful when you have multiple files, solutions, projects, things like that. It can navigate you directly to where this was called from. But this is a similar representation to how stack memory works. We have our first value here, then they get stacked on, and then they get popped off in order like this. They cannot be accessed at random. So it's like first in, first out, which is the terminology there. So stack memory and the call stack use the stack architecture, and while they're related, they're not exactly the same thing. So I hope that makes sense now. So if I then go to method 4, you can see that's the last one added onto the call stack, and then I step over that, and now you can see they're slowly getting popped off the stack. So the method 3 will be the next one to pop off because we're just coming out of there, then 2, and then 1. And now we're back in the main method. You can see it's the last item remaining in the call stack. So that's what the call stack is, and that's also what stack architecture is. And you'll see stack architecture in many different programming languages, but it's not limited to programming either. So one last thing I'm going to talk about is a keyword you may hear in the future called garbage collection. So what is garbage collection? Well, when I talked about creating reference types, for example, things that are stored in the heap area of memory, like classes, instances of classes, strings, arrays, and things like that, I also said that a pointer is created on the stack, and this points to the information on the heap. So it's like a pointer. What can happen is the pointer is removed from the stack area of memory, but the actual data is left behind on the heap. Now our application has no idea where this information is anymore. Maybe it doesn't even need the data anymore, but it could still exist in the heap area of memory. But because the pointer is no longer pointing to it in the stack area of memory, this data on the heap is useless. It can't be used, it can't be found, and it can kind of just fill up your memory until there's no memory left. So this is quite a big problem. This is usually referred to as a memory leak. So there's something called garbage collection that actually kind of goes through the heap area of memory, works out if there's a pointer pointing to it on the stack, and if not, it removes it. It frees up the memory. And this is what garbage collection does. And in a language like C#, you don't have to worry about garbage collection, but I thought it'd be an interesting bit of trivia to tell you. But if you work with other languages, perhaps like C++, then you do need to worry about garbage collection. So maybe it's something to consider, but it is nice to know. And when your application closes or terminates, then generally the memory is freed up.